Yes.
Welcome to the City Council meeting this Monday evening, February 5th. I now call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
With pleasure, Mayor. Councilmember Hedges?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Lorraine?
Here.
Deputy Newsom?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Newsom?
Here.
Mayor Diaz-Nash?
Here. Thank you very much. At this time, I will ask our city clerk if any notifications or requests for virtual meeting presentation have been received from any members of the council due to just cause or emergency circumstances.
We have received no requests for just cause or emergency circumstances.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we are here and very excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, please complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. We will now begin this special meeting with the one item on the agenda, City Council Guidelines Updates, presented by Patrice Olds, our City Clerk.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Honorable City Council members. My name is Patrice Olds, and I am the City of San Mateo City Clerk. And I'm before you tonight to present the City Council Guidelines Update and seek direction from Council on a proposal to start to look at a more robust code of conduct. What? So first of all, let me give you a little bit of background about the City Council guidelines. They were adopted in August of 2015. They've been amended 7 times since that adoption. The last amendment was October 2022. The original council guidelines, we put them together into one single document in 2015 because we had a few different resolutions. They weren't pulled all together and they weren't easy to resource to. And we found that this has been really helpful for us to have everything all together and have regular reviews from the City Council on what are in your reasons for how you conduct yourself. So we have been our practice to seek direction on updating the City Council guidelines first, and then bring the guidelines back for formal approval from the City Council, along with an updated boards and commission rules and procedures. We try to have them mirror each other. Our longer-term goal is that a member of the public, no matter which meeting they go into, is going to have a similar experience. They know what to expect. They know what the rules are. We use the same speaker cards for all of our bodies, just so that we have some continuity on that. For instance, in October 2022, I believe that is when we made an update from the guidelines, particularly with regard to move to the district elections, because that was a very different process for us, so we had some language updates we needed to do. But we didn't put that into, of course, the boards and commission rules and procedures, because they don't have anything to do with districts. But it really was very pertinent to council. So we look for relevancy between the two documents mirroring each other. So why do we make changes to this document? So new and changing laws affect it. For instance, recently there were updates to the Brown Act, and that had to be embedded in how we approach our social media. We needed clear guidance for members of the City Council and our boards and commissions to know what to do on that. Based on experience and results from practical experience, So right now, tonight, one of the items in front of you will be to examine unintended outcomes, such as how the continuity designation in the boards and commission, in the city council liaisons appointment list may be limiting your choices and equity for all the council members to serve. So we want to talk about that and give you an opportunity to weigh in on that. Trends in local government practices. So, for instance, having gone through the pandemic, the move to remote meetings and use of Zoom required additional information on how we address public comment, what order it comes in, and so on. So, also, in response to public concerns raised by the public, we've received in-person comments from the lectern here, lots of emails and formal presentation documentation on need for a more robust code of conduct within our guidelines. And then there's other evolving conditions too. For instance, we recently wanted to document our process for defining it as a limited public forum in here when we started receiving hate speech, hate Zoom. Hate bombing, I guess they call it. So those are all reasons why we would want to update the guidelines. So talking a little bit about what is its intended use. Why do we have these guidelines? It's a handbook for city council use, for staff use, that documents how the city council does its business. All the way from everything is the order of how items are listed on the agenda to broad direction on communicating with the public. So we try to cover everything in there, and I will say there is a code of conduct kind of embedded in other areas within the guidelines also. We do it to provide continuity across all the bodies, which I mentioned earlier. We want every public member coming in to have a similar experience, to know what to expect, and this is a way for us to make sure that we're all operating from the same type of script and following all good rules. It provides the electeds, appointed members, staff, and the public with clear information, direction, and expectations on how to conduct business. And I will tell you, as a staff member, I source to this at least once a week, just to define something, to answer a question, to send people when they request information about how can we do it this way, and I can pull out the clip and send it to a member of the public so they can better understand. It helps us define and clarify roles. For instance, the mayor has a particular role in our mayor rotation system, and this allows us to say what that role is as primary spokesperson for the city council, and also what, for different commissions, where do they, what is their lane? It can help do that too with the boards and commissions. And overall, it sets a standard for professionalism, civility, decorum, and builds trust in the public process when we're all operating from the same process. So we highly recommend continuing to use this and reviewing it regularly. So for tonight, to go through this review, I want to comment a little bit about the staff report. On the staff report, there were an attachment, which was a track changes version of the City Council's guidelines. And so you could see all the many areas we were proposing improvements to the document. In addition to that, we yellow highlighted areas that we are carving out for a separate pointed discussion from the City Council where we really need direction on what you want to do. Some of the updates we do are just like, okay, law changed, we got to change it. It's very simple and easy for staff to get in there to do, but on some of these others, it really is, we need your policy direction on how to do something or what to do for it. So we're going to carve those out. So what I highlighted for the guidelines review, I'd like to start with specifically on a guideline name change, order of public comment on council discussion items, clarification of council liaison rules with the continuity designation, and boards and commission appointment process. Those we absolutely are seeking your governance on and your policy decision. Then we have the track changes version, and I'd invite council and members of the public who want to comment on that to pull out anything that I may not have highlighted in a way that you would like to highlight, change, some wording, or if it's not clear enough, to let me know, and so that we can work on making that the document really work for you, because this is your document. And then we're going to move into what's going to be the heavier lift here, which is the discussion around a more specific or robust code of conduct. I'm going to propose that we first have a kind of a general discussion about the process, and then from this, because the items on the top, I suspect that the code of conduct is going to require more time than we're going to have here in this 90-minute section tonight. So we're going to propose a process for moving forward and get council's direction on that, so that we can do this in a way that honors the process and gives you all enough time to state your lived experience in working with these guidelines and how you would like to see the code of conduct become. So does that approach sound okay? Okay. So the first thing, and I'm just going to go through these quickly so we can get and allow enough time for public comment also, and then come back to receive the direction from council. The first proposal, and this is the one really strong recommendation from staff, is the name change. The fact that we have council guidelines and boards and commission rules and procedures where they're both documents that do the same thing is inconsistent. It doesn't make sense when their intention is the same. It's how all our formal bodies operate, and the term guidelines tends to diminish the importance of this document for you and for us to use. And it's confusing for members of the public. How come there's just guidelines? We get that kind of question sometimes, and they're not. They really are rules and procedures, and it would eliminate some confusion if we're calling both documents the same thing. So our suggestion at council's direction is to call it City Council Rules and Procedures, just like we do. Uh-oh. Sorry, it looks like we have one technical. It looks like they fixed it in the back. Thank you. So that's one particular thing. And then Chapter 7 is the meetings. And we have a proposal in front of you to change the order of how discussion items are handled to instead, staff does a presentation, council asks questions, then we go to public comment. It's proposed that flip that. Staff does a presentation, we go to public comment, and then we come back for questions. And we'd like to hear council's direction on that and their interest in that. Then third, Chapter 12, council liaison roles. We established a continuity designation for those appointed regional bodies, and the rules actually state in the guidelines continuity appointments to external agencies. Those were meant for the regional, heavier lift, external bodies that we get sometimes an opportunity to sit on a member of the board for. And this was more or less erroneously attributed also to Planning Commission liaison and to the Sustainability and Infrastructure liaison roles as continuity. And this past year, when we were developing the liaisons list for appointments and liaisons list for council, we changed the Planning Commission to be one of the mayor and deputy mayor designations, so it would rotate through and everyone would have an opportunity to be liaison to that very important commission we have here. And then, but the continuity, there might be an unintended consequence from continuity designation. The rules state that continuity assignments remain with the assignee unless the member is opting to step down from the role. And so with our current method of ranking and how we do ask for your input on which roles you want out there in appointments and assignments, it means one council member, the way we've defined continuity, can have the role that role the entire time and not give everyone else a chance at it. So some of the things for consideration there are, do you want to cap continuity? Do you want to remove continuity? What kind of direction? Do you see that as an issue? Maybe it's not an issue. We just had very little movement in the liaison and appointee list this particular January. It was not much movement, and we wanted to make sure everybody has a robust chance at doing all the different roles out there. So that's up for your direction. Chapter 13 are the boards and commission appointment process. So we want to ask council, is it your desire to go back to a full city council interview process? We used to do it that way, and we were having trouble with vacancies being open way too long on some of our boards and commissions. It was difficult to not only get enough people interested, and our rule is you should have three applicants for every vacancy so that there's a choice there, and sometimes that was difficult to do. So, and we had trouble getting all of council together for all these extra meetings sometimes. So we came up with this appointment subcommittee process. But we're wanting to question and get council feedback on whether that process still works for you. And what the appointment subcommittee is the mayor and the council liaison to that particular board or commission are the interviewing body. It's an open and public meeting. Members of the public can come. We do that together with an advice from the staff liaison to that particular commission too. And then as part of that process, we've evolved into creating an eligibility list, a ranked eligibility list based on the interviews, because that also allowed us to, if we had some great, candidates for these roles, we could place them in if another vacancy occurred without that churn in the wait time. So there were efficiency reasons for doing it, but we've had some questions from members of the public who wanted to apply for the boards and commission roles and didn't like, first of all, that there was already an established list. And we also heard that maybe there's more interest in having the whole council interview all together. And then also we have a reappointment process. Board and commission members are eligible for 2 full 4-year terms. They can fulfill a vacancy that came up unexpectedly, and that's considered a partial term, and that doesn't count towards their 2 full terms. So they can serve for 8 years, and after the first 4-year term or after the partial term, if council has not said to me, we want to re-interview all of our reappointees. We used to, or my other city, we always re-interviewed all the reappointees before they came back on. So it has a chance for council to check in with how the board and commission is operating, to highlight any issues, and to check in with their official appointees. So it's not a bad process, it just means more meetings for council. So that's one thing. In the eligibility list, the other thing is we mirrored what the city does, and we have a 1-year eligibility list, and we're recommending, if eligibility still wants to work for you, maybe shortening the list or the timing. So if it's 6 months instead or 3 months instead, just something else to consider and talk about. So then I'd like, as I said, given the opportunity for you to go through and tell me anything else you noticed in the rules that you would like to discuss or highlight or ask for your colleagues' direction on to reach consensus. So that's the next step. And then I wanted to talk about the code of conduct. So why is this needed? There is definitely a national trend of a loss of civility and decorum out there in politics and the public process, and it's been happening for a while. There are very, very active inquiries on the city clerk's listserv, seeking guidance and sharing on developing codes of conduct. A lot of cities are looking at this now. It is something all the way across California that there's just a lot of bubble up. At our December New Law Conference put on by the League of California Cities, they offered an education session just on civility and decorum and what to do when it starts going sideways. Both the City Clerks Conference and City Manager Conference coming up, we've noticed there are a couple of items on there where it's the same kind of similar education session as we try and get our hands around making a safe environment for everybody to feel comfortable to come and talk and to participate in the public process. So there is a loss of public trust in governance and frustration that the community is not being heard when issues are raised. So we want to address that. Give an opportunity to look at that. If a question is being elevated about how we're conducting ourselves or any of our boards and commission, it behooves us to fearlessly address it and talk about it. And San Mateo has always been the kind of place who can tackle hard problems. And this might be, a hard problem or difficult to get through, but I know that you can do it. We want to set clear expectations for public official accountability. We want to make sure that the expectations are known for that. And we need to define roles for common understanding and clarity so everybody has enough guidance to know how they're supposed to work in this environment. We are turning over board and commission members all the time. We tend to have, so we do a training for them, and they have their own rules and procedures. They get all those documents. They get some information from Institute of Local Government, which is the nonprofit arm of the League of California Cities that does really good resource materials for cities, including on ethics and integrity. So we provide that also. So mainly, we're bringing this before council to take a lead on establishing this robust code of conduct, because as the governing body, you set the example, and if you're modeling this for all of your appointed bodies, the employees, and residents, it has a more powerful impact. So if you're modeling the adherence to rules of civility, decorum, accountability, and ethics, your city council then is setting the tone for public discourse and action all the time. And we want to acknowledge then, but that's a lot, it's a heavy lift to get through all of this in a way where everybody has enough time, enough processing, and plenty of ability to comment and to suss out issues. So this process, as I mentioned earlier, will probably have additional process and meetings around it too. For preparing for this, we had public requests of council to address ethics and integrity more robust. We've had that here in person. We've had that on emails and all kinds of documents. When we got that direction from the majority of council in May of 2023, we did a city clerk's listserv, and these are the 11 responsive cities that I relied on. The Institute of Local Government has some duplication with this list, but on their site, 20 different codes of conduct and guideline documents. Some cities just have a code of conduct that's separate. Others have them built into their rules and procedures too. So that was our process for gathering input. I will mention there was a link on the staff report that took anyone who wanted to go view these 11 to these. We have them posted on the city's website so you can look and see what other cities do and manage. So just taking a higher level approach and our code of conduct, what are some common elements? So an overarching code of conduct, setting expectations for an official's conduct with the community. It's just like, this is how we are. You are now a public official for the city of San Mateo, and this is our expectation for conduct. Then many of them also had principles and or a purpose statement to outline how come they're doing this. And those could be, those are great foundational things to think through about how we're approaching this, what our intent is, being open-minded, whatever it is council really wants to come up with for this. There's some carve out with more specificity, behavior on the dais, and that can be something as simple as, we always address each other in a formal meeting as, a council member Lee, council member Newsom. And when we're in a less formal environment like the workshop we were in this weekend, it's, Rob and Ammo. And so there could be things as simple as that as we're going through and coming up with specificity for behavior on the dais. The standards, communications was a big part of almost all of them that I looked at. Standards and expectations with each other, appointees, public, and staff. Many cities call that out very, very more robustly. We have a generalized statement in our council guidelines right now talking about, a little bit about this, but in seeing what else is out there, we could be, if not more prescriptive, but definitely more clear and outline the expectations. We don't, how do we define and recognize breaches in the code or the rules, in our code of conduct or the rules? How do we recognize that? We don't have a process for that. Do we have a process for pointing them out? Who can do it? Where does it come from? We have not discussed that. And there are examples out there in the samples we received. And then consequences and enforcement. What does that look like? Is that an avenue the council wants to go down? So we need direction from you on that. Other elements. Some of the codes of conduct we looked at had a values statement in the beginning, a city council specific value statement. You see on the wall over there behind the city manager, this is our organizational mission, guiding principles, and our value statement. And we did a facilitated process to come up with those value statement as a whole organization. Our values for the city organization to run are respect, creativity, integrity, transparency, and inclusivity. And we embed those in our performance reviews and how we bring those items forward, how we work together interdepartmentally and cross-departmentally. And it serves as a firm foundation and a guiding light for us too. So council may consider something like that as your underlying structure as you look at this. Some of them require signing an affirmation for all electeds and appointed members that they read, understood the code of conduct and rules, and they plan to abide by them. And council's probably familiar with that. At the when you're running as a candidate for an elected office seat, you are asked to sign a fair campaign pledge. So a very similar kind of thing to that. But then it's documented in writing, and we've all, we know that we have a process to make sure that it happens at the beginning. So this is an awful lot to get through. So I thought about a few different processes we could do because there's so many different elements you may or may not want to embed or include, and that we hope will be a robust discussion with all of you. Perhaps a good way to do this going forward is a facilitated all of council together workshop to agree on what elements need to be included, to talk about if you want to do core values, principles, a purpose statement, what does that mean? And there are people out there who can facilitate this and have done this before it's living, and we could, if council wants to go that way, we will find the right person to bring forward for you. The council could decide, as we've successfully done in other avenues, to appoint a 2-member subcommittee of the city council to work with clerk, city manager, and with advice from the city attorney to examine elements and come up with a proposal for full council consideration. That's another common way of tackling something so big as this. You can try and get all the way through it tonight in 90 minutes and provide direction on the preferred elements and direct staff to schedule another study session. The one thing about study session is we're constrained by time because we usually do them right up against a regular meeting. So the way I'd like to get through tonight all of the proposed changes in the boards and commission rules and procedures, and anything else, you have direction there. And then we could get to a point of, at the very least, defining what process it is. And you might have other ideas about how a process for doing something that is a heavy lift as this could work. So I want to open that up for City Council to give us direction on. And at this point, I want to pause in the presentation and ask for, because we haven't changed the rules yet, council questions, and then public comment.
Well, I'm going to start by saying thank you. That's not a question, but this has been something we've been discussing as a council, as a community for quite a while, and a tremendous amount of research went into this. So really, it's going to help make it a much more robust conversation. So thank you very much. And with that, let me open it up to questions. Councilmember Hedges.
First, Patrice, this was a lot to read, so it was a tremendous amount of work for you. So thank you so much. I received an email on this, and I was already thinking about it. If we call it rules, then who decides when somebody violates the rules? Do we have a neutral third party? I don't want it to devolve into a political discussion where, because somebody is disliked, they're automatically.
I think that absolutely has to be part of the council discussion and direction.
Yeah, I think if we're going to call it rules, we need to decide that there's a neutral third party who's going to adjudicate somebody violating the rules.
That needs to be part of the discussion and direction from council.
Sure. So that would be one question. As far as breaking the continuity issue, you feel it'd be okay on some and not others?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd be interested to hear how council views this.
And the other question I have for you is, why aren't we now, or maybe we have in the past, requiring people on the council, maybe even the commissions, to take the ethics course every 2 years the state offers? I've taken it about 30 times with all the boards and commissions I've been on, and it's a good program.
That is a proposal that was in the staff report also. We could, right now, City Council takes the AB 1234 mandated ethics training every 2 years. So do our planning commissioners. As you know, we have more boards and commissions than that, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. The city I was with prior did that. I did a quick survey of San Mateo County cities, and I would say at least half of them are doing it for all of their commissions. Some of them leave a couple of them optional. The commission can decide for itself. So, but we definitely would seek direction on that too.
Yeah, the one thing that you got to know is you got to do the whole hour. I swept through it in 50 minutes one time and I had to do it over again.
You do.
That's it for right now.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lorraine.
Thank you, through the mayor. Patrice, when we talk about continuity for liaison appointments, is staff asking the question mainly about internal roles, or was staff concerned about internal and external roles?
You can absolutely make it go to internal also. Right now, the way it has been written, it's for external agencies. So if that's a correction you'd like to make, we received direction on that, and we're happy to make that change. And then, my bigger concern with bringing that up is there an issue there? For somebody a council member to stay on CCAG for 8 years, is that good? Or do you want other people? I don't know, where it might be that continuity was described that way because there's so much information and background that you need to have to do that. And for those continuity commissions, we have always dictated that there is an alternate, someone in the wings who's maybe going to some of the meetings and getting that information and knowledge and background so that they could step into the role when needed. But then it's still locked down to like those two at that level. Does that work for you? It may work fine. I just wanted to raise the question.
Thank you. And to continue on this idea of potentially including members of boards and commissions in ethics training, I guess I'm curious as to whether this could be done with, are we talking about inviting members of our boards and commissions to the League of California Cities annual meeting? Or is there maybe something that could be in-house that might be a little more affordable and cost efficient and effective?
And geared to the city of San Mateo more, too.
Oh, that would be great.
So I've worked in a city before where we did, especially when AB 1234 first came out, we did in-house trainings for the ethics, and that's led by the city attorney's department because they can put on, I'm not going to speak for Persona, but they can put on that training for sure. We also have, and I think it's good to do that periodically because when it brings you all together and then you can make it more San Mateo focused, I think that's a more robust questions and discussion, and that is helpful. The Fair Political Practices Commission has had an online program, which they are doing away with. So we have a new net file who does our campaign finance filing system and the Statement of Economic Interest form filing system for us. They've developed an AB 1234 ethics training and are making it available to all the cities. So we can still have that online system too. So, but the Fair Political Practices one is going away.
Thank you. And no further questions at this time.
Right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Newsom, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Lee? No? Okay, I think also I've got some details about the red lines, but I think in regard to the 4 questions that you raised, I do not have any at this time.
Okay.
So why don't we open it up to public comment?
Okay, Erin will be managing that for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Briefly before we begin public comment, I just want to mention that our apologies to our Zoom viewers. You may have experienced some technical issues viewing the feed to the City Council chamber at the beginning of the meeting. The issue has been resolved, and I also want to mention that we are streaming to YouTube as well. That recording doesn't seem to have been impacted, and the complete recording can be viewed there.
Thank you, Erin.
Okay. Our first speaker is Dave Cohen.
Three.
Let us turn on the microphone, please.
She's starting the clock. There you go.
Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff, Dave Cohen, speaking on behalf of Ethics San Mateo. First of all, Patrice, city manager, excellent presentation. Thank you. Thank you for the hard work on behalf of not just Ethics San Mateo, but I think all the residents of San Mateo. Thank you. We've presented lots of information to you. I gave a lengthy presentation at the Blue Sky meeting. You have things in writing from us. You've had many comments from us over the past year, a lot of things in writing. I'm not going to go through the detail of all those things. You know what we're all about. We're all about ethical conduct in our city governance. It's all in your hands. In our review of the staff report, we're encouraged that there is good research, great research, good discussion, and offered solutions, some very good offered solutions. And as a side, Councilmember Hedges, we have suggested that a third-party arbitration or mediation be used when required, when there's violations. We recognize that we don't want to see politics in it either. Nobody does. We do not want to become the city and county of San Francisco. However, the redlined rules and procedures document is a bit disappointing, understanding that the code of conduct and everything else is quite complex. The red lines are mainly technical of nature, if I can use that term. But there are some things that I'd like to point out. First of all, using the term rules versus guidelines, yay, thank you. Yes, that's what it is, because it is rules. However, the rule that the council members are not to announce the decisions before an item is ready to vote is good, but needs more clarity and strengthening to include social media. Again, when is somebody a private individual and when is somebody a city official? Individual council members to decide whether or not they have a conflict of interest, even in conflict with the city attorney's recommendations, is not good. Like fox watching the hen house. There's still no enforcement or consequence for violations of the rules. As discussed, you're going to talk about this. Without the conduct sections, the types of bad behavior we have observed is not addressed, but you're going to work on that. We strongly request that you engage an independent expert organization to advise you and facilitate real reform. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Lisa Vandervoort.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Lisa Vandervoort, and I'm a 37-year resident of San Mateo, which kind of blows my mind. First of all, I want to say yay for ethics, and thank you for putting on such a great presentation and study so far. I'm excited to see ethics being studied right now on the City Council and being a priority here in San Mateo. First of all, I want to say that I support the Code of Conduct name change from guidelines to rules. That is an important first step, but you can't have rules without enforcement or consequences. And I see nothing in the red-lined draft Code of Conduct document that addresses that. The 5 elements of the Code of Conduct in the staff report and the line item components are a great start. I ask that you consider adding provisions suggested by Ethics San Mateo regarding social media, conflicts of interest, and serving the community first. This will take a lot of work and will require significant further study, but this is a phenomenal start. I urge you to continue this important effort, for without a solid code of conduct to drive ethical behavior in our leaders, there is no trust in government. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Evan Adams, followed by Rick Sakuda.
And clock. Timer.
Hi, City Council. Nice to see you tonight. So, tonight I'm here, obviously from Foster City. You all know me. I was subject to frequent harassment using our code of conduct. Foster City, while not mentioned in your staff report, had a code of conduct go into place in 2020. It was a highly politicized vote. There was extreme angst. There were watchdogs. There were ethics citizen judges who came out. It passed in 2020. Within hours of it passing, emails from those same people were sent complaining about me personally, about my social media, about my interaction in the community, about questioning, should I, as a gym flooring contractor, be getting rich as a planning commissioner trying to sell residential flooring? It was hateful and very painful. That code of conduct went away about a year later in 2021 to the cost of our city attorney and our city manager. Our city attorney had been our longest single-serving team member in management in Foster City. And our city attorney didn't get fired by the city council. Our city attorney dropped Foster City as a client over all of this angst that it created. What was the barrier to make a code of conduct complaint in Foster City? An email. That was it. So you got the same copy and paste email from dozens of people. And every email caused the city attorney to rack up billable hours, recognizing the complaint, starting a process, opening an investigation, eventually hiring investigators, depositions, discussions in closed session. I shouldn't know about those, but I do. It cost Foster City tens, perhaps even $100,000 over a Facebook group that I run. Come on. That I ran with a city council member at the time. Every one of these sorts of code of conduct, it is about getting the best people in your community, right? You want the best people to come forward and serve your city. You don't want them to avoid coming to serve your city because of the muzzle that might be put on them. You want to encourage good speech, active speech. So I'd ask you, please look for holes, loose wording. In Foster City, it was a generalized social media statement. What is that? Please consider the tools you already have and using all of them to their fullest extent, and ensure strong guardrails to prevent mission creep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rick Sakuda, followed by Michael Riggin.
Good evening. 3 minutes. I don't know what to do with myself here. Thank you, Patrice. That was an excellent report. I thought that being city clerk was a pretty cool job, but now I see it's pretty tough. And then Mr. Hedges, Mr. Cohen mentioned third-party adjudication. So I see right away that I'm in a little bit over my head because we just need to respect each other. We need to respect the staff and respect citizens. Is it that hard that we need third-party adjudication? It's been obvious that there's been great polarization in our city. If we don't stop, we'll be in a perennial state of conflict. I'm asking each of you to pledge that you will put every effort into bringing our city back into a state of relative balance. Stand up and be counted. Be known by your actions and not your words. Be accountable. At the end of the year, let's summarize what's gone right and what's gone wrong, and whose efforts are bringing about change. The greatest source of conflict occurs when scores of San Mateo residents sign up to speak at city council or a commission meeting, not this council, because I believe that each of you listen. And I know that I can call any of you and get a fair shot. But previously and currently with the commissions, people are ignored. This fosters anger and division. Some examples. At 2 planning commission meetings for the fish market, 90 and 70 residents presented their comments, and not one was recognized or discussed or debated. It was a done deal, and that violates the Brown Act and the very principles of democracy. This is what breeds anger and polarization. Another example, on a positive note, at a Park and Rec Commission meeting about the fish market, co-hosted by CDC and their staff, I spoke first. I asked that the commissioners, the directors, and staff carefully listen to the public comments and recognize them. They each did so. There was an open discussion on every comment that was made. In the end, I can say that not one person left angry or betrayed. Everyone felt that their voice was heard. This should be the standard for every meeting. City government should be working for the betterment of the entire city, and it appears that personal agendas and bias are brought onto the job. When an employee reports for work, they should leave their personal agendas at the door when they punch in, and at that time, the agenda must be what's best for all of San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Riggin, followed by Vikash.
Good evening. Again, great job. Very good presentation. Myself, Michael Reagan, representing Beresford Hillsdale Neighborhood Association. I believe you received a letter that we had sent you. Just a brief statement on it. We thereby support and champion the recommendations submitted by Ethics San Mateo in the endeavor to strengthen and create real positive change to the Code of Conduct, and with its implementation to our elected and appointed representatives, thereby resulting in a beneficial effect of the entirety of our community and city. That's just what we had, partially what we had written you. I think this is really important. I know we started this last year. I want to give kudos to Dave Cohen. He's really worked hard on this, and he's given you a lot of information, and very proud of what he's done, and I hope you can use that. The thing I worry about is, from my reading on the subject, a lot of communities have gutted their ethics standards, and I'd hate to see us do that. It's got to have some real significant importance, and people in your position and the commissioners have to respect that and know that they are on call, as we are with our jobs. And I think it's important for the trust of the community to install that. And I also, as a reference, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Markula Center for Applied Ethics, which is out of the Santa Clara University, is a great source of information if you guys want to look that up. They have a whole department on it. And again, there was also an article in the San Francisco Chronicle today about San Francisco's ethics standards where they're reviewing it. So hopefully we can get this into our city and set our standards. I know that I hear this a lot when I come to these meetings, how we want to be the first, the best. We're the biggest city in the San Mateo County, and I really believe that this would be a great example to the rest of the cities, how important this would be to us to kind of put this into effect into our city. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our last in-person speaker is Vikash.
Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members, I want to speak and give examples of how ethics and conduct should be conducted in San Mateo. We have to invoke a termination clause, which means you can't yell and accuse anyone of racism, whether it's a commissioner or any departmental members, to the public. That should be immediate grounds for termination and barring to come back to the city of San Mateo for work. Okay. An example in our industry is you can have disagreements, you can have conflict. When we have a lab meeting, we have long drawn out arguments and fights about how to cure cancer. Okay. But what we don't do is reach our finger out and say, hey, you're racist, or hey, you're from this culture or this background. That's driving your conflict about curing cancer. Stay on the topic and carry forward. Otherwise, it's a grounds for termination. We need to have a termination clause. Anybody who misbehaves should be eliminated and not be allowed to return back to the city of San Mateo government at all, okay? We do that in industry all the time. Can you imagine if we didn't do that? We would never be able to treat cancer, okay? Second thing, hostile work environment. When city council members scold each other, it puts a chilling effect on the public, just like clapping or cheering does when we're told as the public here. It puts a chilling effect on the public. Then we lose, it depletes our confidence in government. If that should also be a ground for recall or termination. You have to understand one thing, self-regulation is tough. Even us in industry, when we regulate ourselves, either by FDA or by any other governmental organizations, it is a tough business because we have to face the music at the end. Why didn't this clinical trial, why did it fail? We have to face the music. We can get fired for it too, okay? Self-regulation. All of the council members need to realize that. It's a tough challenge. Third, Brown Act training for commission members and committee members. That has to be done maybe for now on a weekly basis. Brown Act, we have seen numerous violations of Brown Act violations, and we believe that it's time to enforce termination clauses for Brown Act violations. Okay? And finally, the whole council should interview all board and commissioner members, just like we do. When we interview people, we go through an 8-hour interview process for every candidate. Everybody in the team interviews that person. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
At this time, I'd like to ask our virtual participants to please raise your hand if you wish to speak. Again, virtual participants, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. We're going to have one last in-person speaker. Go ahead, Jordan.
Good evening, council, staff. I really wasn't planning to speak on this item. Normally I prepare some more polished remarks, but I feel compelled to speak on this specifically because I don't believe the code of conduct will even marginally improve discourse in the city. And that's because I believe that the source of discord is not coming from the city council. It's coming from the community itself. And so placing rules, further rules and restrictions on the council members is not liable to really have or create any change. Really, the issue that we're dealing with is that we have a city that is fractured in many different ways. We have multiple groups who are used to getting their way on certain issues. You have groups that have held power over land use and community development for many years in the ways that they've preferred to shape the city. And that power is waning. You have new voices, people who are coming to council for the first time who have decided that they don't like the way that the city has progressed, or rather not progressed over the last few decades. And so people are finding these voices and they are speaking for the first time. And many aren't used to doing that. Many aren't used to having that voice and are struggling to coherently articulate what they are looking for in a productive way. And then you have many others who are not used to being challenged and who are struggling to articulate in a respectful way why they feel threatened and why they feel concerned. And so placing these additional restrictions on council, I don't believe will make us a more civil society. What I do believe we need is for council, for all members of council, to find the backbone that we need them to have, to stand up and say, this is enough, this is not acceptable. In my time commenting at city council over the last 6-7 years, I've experienced threats of physical violence. I've had people tell me to kill myself. There is absolutely something very wrong with our society as it is, but the code of conduct isn't going to fix that. The only thing that is our leaders stepping up and saying, this is not okay. We must treat people with dignity, with respect, and allow voices, all voices, to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll begin our virtual public comment. Again, if you wish to comment, please raise your hand. Our first virtual speaker is Sarah Fields. Sarah, give me one moment while I allow you to speak. Okay, Sarah, you may unmute and give your comments.
Thank you. Good evening, staff and members of the council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. My name is Sarah Fields. I'm the current chair of the Park and Recreation Commission, although I'm obviously speaking here this evening on behalf of myself. I will say it is a great honor to be on a commission for the city of San Mateo. I've read through these. I understand the intent, but given what several of the speakers have said, it's not clear that the intent is really met through these guidelines and through this code of conduct. We all do need to hold ourselves to account, and certainly more training around the Brown Act is always beneficial. But the reality is, if you're on a commission, you're a volunteer, and if you're on the city council, you're very close to a volunteer. I know you are somewhat compensated, but not certainly at a level that's reflective of the hours you put into your service. That being said, there are a tremendous number of transparency rules that already govern service to the city in our great state of California. Financial disclosures, the Brown Act itself, which we've heard about quite a bit this evening. All of these things do guarantee accountability, transparency, and a certain level of professionalism, even though this is more or less a volunteer commitment. So would I like to see some improvements around personal conduct? Sure, but I don't think that this is the pathway to do it. And I look forward to exploring other options that I think better befit our city and the work that we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no more hands raised.
All right, if that's the case, then I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. And Madam Clerk, if maybe you can put back up the slide that has the 4 areas of discussion you would like us to focus on.
Yes, I'm getting ready to do that.
Thank you very much.
It's not responding. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excuse me, we're having a little technical difficulty here.
Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute break while that's being done, okay? Thank you, everyone. for being respectful. We appreciate it. Okay. I think this would be a great way of trying to organize our discussion. If anyone has any other comments, but I think that these 4 items, it would be great if we could go down order. Who would like to start the discussion with the name change? Councilmember Lorraine. Yeah, we're just going to go straight down the list.
Okay, one at a time?
One at a time.
All right.
Yep.
I support changing the name from guidelines to rules and procedures.
Okay. Does anyone have a different opinion? Rich? Councilmember Hedges, excuse me.
I agree with the change in the name, but there has to be some specificity on how the rules are handled if there's a violation of the rules. I don't think we can leave it up to internally the city. I think there needs to be a third party that makes that decision.
And Councilmember Lee, you agree?
I agree with the name change.
Okay, great. Do you have any comment on the idea of having an arbiter?
I thought that we were having my understanding is you're suggesting we facilitate going number one, and then we're going all the way down.
Yes.
So
yes.
Is that still what we're doing?
Yeah, that is.
Okay, so my answer to number 1 is I agree with the name change.
Okay, but Councilmember Hedges brought up the point of having an arbiter, so I'm wondering if you have any comment on that as part of the name change.
I think I'll address that at a later time.
Okay.
In the conversation.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor.
Support the name change.
Okay, well, I think we are in agreement on the name change. Yes, I do as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then doing the change so that public comment comes before council questions. Once again, yes? Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
I saw the unanimous agreement for that.
Okay, are you fine with that, Councilmember Hedges?
Absolutely. Somebody that has children in an early morning, it gives them a little time to make their comment and go home.
Exactly. Are we all in agreement? Yes? Okay, so I think we have agreement there as well. The council liaison roles. Who would like to start the discussion about that? Specifically, yes, Councilmember Lorraine.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, through the mayor. I'll just mention, I think with regard to continuity, I appreciate staff bringing it up. And I think when it comes to internal liaison roles, I feel like we could potentially do away with it. I think it's not, I think that it's likely not critical to have such a designation for our boards and commissions. But I do think it's important for external appointments, some of which, and I think just from lived experience of 1 year on a couple of those boards, I could see why they have continuity designations. It's almost like separate councils. The agenda items are numerous and varied and touch on a number of topics and a great history. That takes a while to learn if you're not briefed properly. And additionally, these boards and committees can sometimes have subcommittees that also require meetings and have their own agendas. And so that's a lot to take on. And I just think, some of those subcommittee roles are not really great to give to people who are stepping into a role for the first time. So, for example, I've been appointed to a couple subcommittees in one of my boards. Now that I have a year of experience and have learned a bit more of what's going on and why, and I can contribute more to the discussion. So, I think to Patrice's point, I do think like we could potentially discuss term limits or something if we were interested in moving these appointments around a little more. But I also think it might be possible to have some of those conversations leading up to the annual review of these. So I guess personally, I think if we were to keep the way we handle external continuity at this time, I would be comfortable with it. Those are my comments.
Great. Councilmember Hedges.
So I'm pretty much in agreement. I'm going to be a little more specific on the continuity with boards and commissions with the liaisons. I think with the change to mayor and vice mayor on the planning commission, that actually gives me a guideline if we're not going to have continuity. So if you're the deputy mayor this year, you'll be the mayor next year. So it's likely that there'll be a continuity of 2 years. So I would be okay with breaking it up in 2-year intervals, but no, certainly not yearly. But I actually don't have a problem with the way it is now. But if we decide to go that way, then I think that would be the way to do it. And I'm going to give an example, which actually, Patrice, you brought up on CCAG. I spent 20 years on MTC, 18 years on the TA, on Measure W. I was there through the express lane development, loaning the money to the express lanes to get it finished. I was there through Caltrain electrification. If I hadn't done that, I'd be lost on CCAG right now. So it's, and I'm also on a committee with CCAG and have applied for another committee. So I think that continuity is really the best way to go to these liaison boards and commissions outside of San Mateo. That's my comments for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Newsom.
Just would say I agree with both Councilmember Lorraine and Hedges, particularly, thinking of the external. I've been on the fire board now for a year and a quarter, and with these types of boards, it takes time just to even get in your groove and know what fully is going on. So I think that makes a lot of sense to have some minimum time for that. And even with the internals, I would be okay with discontinuing the continuity for internals, but I also could see myself to the idea of a 2-year term like Councilmember Hedges suggested. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Councilmember Lee.
I'd say I generally agree with everything that was stated, and I appreciate the distinction between the external and the internal liaison positions. And I, for all the reasons stated, agree that external liaison positions, I think continuity is paramount, honestly. And it takes a lot of time to get up to speed, and it's a serious commitment. And I think that we would actually be doing our city a great disservice in having frequent rotations on those as representation for our city on those bodies. For our internal liaison positions, I'm open to changes. I think that there are some, I have some concerns in terms of the multi-year projects that we see, especially under the Sustainability and Infrastructure committee, and I think about the necessity of having longevity on some of the ad hoc committees that we need to stand up. And so I guess it would have changed the makeup significantly of our appointment process, for example, to the general plan subcommittee potentially. And I think that, that kind of reshuffling can, have its benefits and also its trade-offs, right? So I'm open to it. If council feels strongly about making this change, it's worth a shot. But I'd say I'd hold firm on the external positions.
Thank you very much. I think I am in the same frame of mind that externally, much as it would be great to have more opportunity for other people to get on committees and learn things, there is tremendous value in representing your city on regional boards and commissions that have representatives who have been there a while and have some understanding. I'd be more open to term limits, but if the rest of the council wants to not have that, that's fine. I do support not having continuity internally, and partially with the internal committees, partially because I think it's important that each one of us gets well-versed. And if the council believes that having a 2-year term limit would allow us to have some continuity, I'd be fine with that. So maybe that's something we can look at internally as opposed to ongoing. I think it's just for internal commissions, if you're on the council for 12 years and you're the XYZ commission liaison for 12 years, there's an issue with that, but that's a specific example. So I think what I'm hearing is that we're fairly fine with keeping continuity and external. And am I hearing that we're okay with not having it internally, but perhaps having a 2-year continuity as opposed to an unlimited continuity?
I can go either way. 2 years fine with me, but I'm fine with 2 years.
Microphone, please.
As I said, I'm fine with it either way. I'm okay with the way it is now, but the 2-year is okay with me too. I came to the 2-year because Rob Newsom, who's now the vice mayor, will be on for 2 years.
Right. Okay. You want to say something, Councilmember Lorraine?
Thank you. I think I appreciate Councilmember Lee bringing up a point of a separate internal subcommittee that was formed to provide input on a multi-year project or program, and I think in those instances we may want to retain council discretion in determining whether something like that would require some sort of continuity. I think as we look, I guess when I thought about this, I was thinking mainly about what exists today as we have recently concluded the service of those on the subcommittee. And so we're just talking about SIC at this point. I think based on the previous decision to change how the Planning Commission works, as Councilmember Hedges mentioned, there's something of an effective 2-year term for that, for those who go through the rotation normally. But I think rather than putting that rule on SIC, I think I would say I could see removing continuity from SIC, because I think the main considerations for internal liaisons right now appear to be being a resource to the chair and the staff. It's more to do, in my opinion, with conduct than with content. And there's some role to play in appointment interviews, as the city clerk mentioned. But other council members can choose to join appointment interviews. Other council members can choose to go back and see minutes or video of meetings. So I think if we feel like we need to make a decision today, I could see just removing the continuity from SIC, trying out this new way of handling the Planning Commission, and reserving judgment on future commissions and committees that may require some sort of continuity.
Thank you. Any comment?
I appreciate the way you articulated that, and I agree.
I would agree with that approach. I think it allows for some room for iteration.
Great. I think we are all together. Thank you very much, Councilmember Lorraine, for pulling that together. And then the last one, board and commission appointment process. Appointment subcommittee versus full council, and what do we do about the length of the eligibility list?
Through the mayor, can I ask a clarifying question? My understanding is that at this stage, there are 2 designated liaisons that will facilitate the selection process, but the invitation and possibility of attending and participating in deliberation and consideration is already available to the full council. And there's nothing preventing all council members from actively participating in every single one of those decisions. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify a little more about what Councilmember Lee was saying. So there is no Brown Act concern if 3 of us are to be sitting on an interview panel, and if there is a third person that's not designated, do they still have a vote, or is it just they're in advisory capacity?
No, we bring forward a staff report under the consent calendar for the appointment subcommittee who's going to be appointed to it. And in that staff report, we always invite city council, if they would like to join that, to poll it and let us know. And then we agendize it differently than just appointment subcommittee. We agendize it as city council sitting as the appointment subcommittee. And it's still an open and public meeting.
Okay, just a little more. So if there's two people on the planning commission and a third wants to join in, we can do that, but we have to have it so noted ahead of time and make it.
So that we can agendize it properly,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
So, and just to put a point on that, when the subcommittee meets and makes a recommendation, that is then agendized, goes on to a consent calendar item, which gives all council members a second opportunity to weigh in. So effectively, there are two very public and open processes that already allow for the full council to participate. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Great. Yes.
Thank you. That was my understanding as well, and for those reasons, I actually would recommend keeping the process as is. I think it actually strikes a pretty good balance of flexibility in that council members can join if they wish an appointment process and interviews. Without unnecessarily burdening council members with interviews that they don't feel they need to join. And there are a number of them. And I also, I think that a one-year ranked eligibility list seems prudent and efficient. I think we've used it quite a bit. And there are sometimes vacancies, and if there are multiple times in which we have a vacancy through the year, I think that's where the list can really be helpful. I appreciate the being efficient with staff's time as well as council members in this regard.
So I'm going to give you a little different take on it. I'm okay with the way the system is now, but if I were going to change it, I would either go with the full council or drop the ability for city council people to, on their own, go into a meeting. Let me tell you why. There's been several people that have applied for boards and commissions that I liked a great deal, and I restrained myself from going into any of the meetings to root for anybody because I think it's a bad idea, but I don't think everybody would always do that. So I think it's just a good idea to either have the two people there, because myself or everybody else can weigh in the council meeting. So, or to go with the full council, because I've been interviewed by the full council and it wasn't a big deal.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Newsom?
Sure. I think I'm in agreement with most that I'm okay with keeping it as is for the first one. And I like the idea of continuing on for a one-year eligibility list.
Councilmember Lee, do you want to say something?
I would agree. I think that the practice we have in place is for the subcommittee and the full council, which allows for full council participation into different methods and times, is working. I think for the eligibility list, I would be open to, if council pleases, to lowering the eligibility list to a maximum of 6 months. I think, as we've done our demographic survey now twice over the last 5 years, we have really big holes in representation. And I know that it's a very important priority for our new city manager to expand communication and community engagement in a much more focused and robust way. And I hope that will encourage greater participation and more people stepping up and raising their hand to actually apply and be commissioners, become commissioners. And so I worry that the kind of legacy of our practice and having a one-year eligibility list might actually kind of run counter to the community engagement sort of supercharged methodology that I think is we're on the brink of rolling out. And so I think that we could maybe strike a balance by lowering the amount of time to 6 months. And I do have some other points of feedback just in terms of better tracking on our application process for boards and commissions. The district, for example, that the community members are applying from. I think that should be something that is highly visible to all of us in the room. I know that in the recent interviews that we've done, that has been something that has been made explicit, but it was something after the fact and it wasn't illustrated in the application itself. And so, there are many demographic data points that I think that we should and can be collecting and making more present in our selection process, and geographic representation being one of them, that we have a long way to go. At this point, 50%. Almost 50% of all boards and commissioners are from one district, which is District 1. Mm-hmm. So we have a long way to go to reach geographic equity. So I'd be interested to hear from other council members about lowering the time to 6 months.
Well, I guess since everybody has, you want to say something, Councilmember Hedges?
I would be okay to lowering it with 6 months with the proviso that when somebody drops off the list, they're sent a letter inviting them to apply again. Because I just don't think we should cut the cord that starkly. And I have to reach out and absolutely agree with Councilwoman Lee, because District 4 had, I think, the slimmest amount of commissioners. Now, there's been, on my part and Danielle's part, an attempt, and we've had people apply that have never applied for commissions before, not knowing whether they'll be appointed or not, but at least they're applying. And so I think part of with district elections, I think, is incumbent for the leadership in the district to get the word out for people to apply. And I've been doing that, and so has Danielle. So that can make a difference, and I'm sure you're doing it as well in your district, yeah. So, because it's important to the city, that's where we get our future leaders.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess just to sort of wrap it up, I am comfortable with keeping this subcommittee for all the reasons that my colleagues said, and looking at a 6 month on the eligibility list. I think I come at it both from what my colleagues have said and also from the fact that if you are applying and you're told, I'm sorry, there's nobody else, so you have to wait 8 months, that can be very frustrating, particularly if you're working very hard and to get people to apply. So I wonder if there's some way of, after the 6 months, the ones who are there have an option for another 6 months, but I don't know how that might work, but I think 6 months would work. But to try and, how do we retain those people who expressed interest? So, okay.
Thank you. That's good feedback, Dee. The only other thing I wondered about is reappointments. Do you want a different process for reappointments than what we're currently using?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to say something?
Not exactly. No, I think it's okay. I did have one note. Farther down, if we were going to, when we engaged in, I think if we start talking about conduct, and if there were an issue with the conduct of a commissioner that was raised in a certain way, I think the staff, one of the listed ideas was to have an automatic interview for reappointment, and I think there may be some value in that, but we would have to have a broader discussion and to discuss, about. Yeah, exactly. What, as Councilmember Hedges said off mic, what triggers that?
Yeah. Okay, great. Comments down here?
I'm comfortable as is. I think, maybe we can revisit or we can have a reopener of this specific decision point when we return to the rest of this meeting agenda,
Right,
whenever that will
exactly.
be. So, yeah, I think I'm okay leaving that kind of unanswered for now, because it could be tied to other decisions.
Fair enough. Deputy Mayor?
Just backtracking to 4, I would also be okay with 6 months and making that change. I think the big key there being communication and making sure that we're telling them that, the list is now closed, but to reapply. I also, skipping even further up, I think in the case of other council members going into interviews that they're not necessarily the liaison to, I think it's really important that we reach out, and this is not a criticism, it's just an area of improvement. Like, it would be really helpful to be, hey, I'm not on that commission, but we have an opening commission, and sort of communicate that, because then, as Councilmember Hedges was saying, we can all go to our own districts in particular, but city at large, and help recruit for those. So I think that would be helpful. And then in terms of reappointment, I think I'd like to put that on hold until we have a deeper conversation. Thank you.
Okay.
So if I could do the lateness of the hour, and we're abutting our regular meeting. This was great feedback for me to go to the next step. I would like to make a recommendation to council that if you had anything in the red line version you wanted to point out to me, that you send it to me and me only. I will compile them together with council member names, and the next time we bring that up, we will present it, and we will have time then to go through that. Does that make sense for everyone?
That was what I was going to suggest, so I agree with that.
Yes, in a word.
Okay, so I guess and you're okay down here?
And the last thing is to give us direction on how do you want to proceed.
Right. So who's got a comment on that first?
Can I suggest that we just re-agendize the second half of this meeting for another study session? Because I think it would be really tough to squeeze out a decision that, given the time in the late hour. And there are a lot of the potential options that deserve conversation. And so in order to give staff, give us a chance to deliberate in the way that this topic deserves, I would suggest we re-agendize it.
And that was an option. All those in favor?
Yes, but with a view to folks who actually have to commute here from work, if there's a possibility we could start maybe half an hour earlier than we did today? Because this is really a lengthy process.
You mean in terms of...
I see the person who has to commute's not too happy with that.
Sure. Well, what about Adam too? Yeah.
So I would actually, I would like to ask the council for thoughts about, like more broadly, how we tackle this conduct piece. I think one option is to simply re-agendize it and have a full 90-minute or perhaps longer study session, focusing just on that piece. Personally, I like the idea of having somebody mediating it to help us. I appreciate the suggestion from Ethics San Mateo, and I think I also frankly would like to maybe bring in some more third-party guidance on what good could look like for the city of San Mateo. I appreciated getting to look through the sample codes, and I think I feel like I can support a lot of what staff listed as potential ideas to strengthen the code of conduct piece. But I think when it gets to the enforcement piece, we're going to have some. We may have some strong opinions, and I think it may benefit us to have somebody external guide us through it.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
I would agree. If we're not, I guess if I'm not sure if we're deciding on a direction right now, or we're waiting, or we're going to have a discussion then to decide. But if I were to, if I were to state a preference right now, I would say that I would completely agree with Councilmember Lorraine's approach that that this is a contentious issue potentially, and we would benefit greatly from a third-party neutral facilitator with deep expertise in best practices that have been effective. I think that would set a really important tone for us to explore the options, and I think that it would model the kind of civility and decorum that we're striving towards, right? And so we want to set ourselves up for success in this conversation, and I see that investment as a way to do so.
And Deputy Mayor Newsom,
I concur.
you concur? Okay, and you concur?
I concur.
Okay, and I completely concur. I would also suggest that we do it not on a Wednesday night or a Monday night, but we do it on a Saturday morning. I was very impressed with our Blue Sky session this past weekend, and I thought, certainly we had a great facilitator, but a good mediated discussion was wonderful, and it also was, we had a little bit of room to breathe in having that discussion. So I guess I would just say, I think we're all in agreement that, am I correct, that this would be a good thing to have separately, and ask staff to come back with some recommendations, but having it include mediator, have it include, and neutral, have it include a lot of third-party expertise to help us understand, as Councilmember Lorraine said, what good could look like. And then we would have some time to talk big picture. I personally think we need a statement of purpose and values, and that in and of itself is a big discussion in addition to all the things my colleagues have raised.
So what I'm hearing is that council consensus on having a mediator, facilitator, expert, third-party neutral guide, the code of conduct discussion. But to get to the get the rest of the guidelines input, we could come back for a quick section on a study session, not probably needing the whole 90 minutes, where we can update the rest of the track changes and get direction from you on who we would bring forward for that and a date.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I think I have what I need. I
Thank
appreciate
you
it
very much. All right.
And
you're
we
done.
need 10 minutes to
You've
flip
done
the
a wonderful
meeting.
job, Patrice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know how we get along without you.
Thank you. All right, 10 minutes.
We are adjourned.